In this activity, we are going to make a page responsive. And then we're going to do a little bit with the banner and paragraph, organize some things up here a little bit. So we're going to start with code that's similar to what you've been working with, but now I've put together all the different sections on distraction that you all have written and added to the a side over here to include all of your new content that you've added. So this is we're going to start building here. You're going to want to use the code that I sent you that has all of this new content, but you're also going to want to use your own style sheet. So the new code doesn't have your style sheet, so be sure and use the style sheet that you created from the last activity. If you have issues with that, let me know, and I'll help you work through those. Well, responsive means that a page reacts based on how big it is. So responsive, and really the reason we use it is that people are looking at web pages on a variety of devices. So they might look at it on a big desktop, or they might look at it on a tablet, or they might look at it on a phone. And we want to be able to control how that looks in all those different settings. For example, if we take our page currently, and it's looking fine right here, but if we go down small, like it would be on a phone, it no longer looks really good. It's like, oh, why are these columns so teeny, and these images over here are getting so small, they're hard to see. This doesn't look really good. It's like, that might not be the best organization for a phone. And so we could leave our web page the way it is, and phones would just look like this. But we have a better user experience if we change it, if we change the layout as the web page changes screens. So this is called responsive web design. And so we need to be able to code our web pages to look different in the different kind of context that it is in. To make our pages responsive, we're going to use this rule that's called the @media rule, and what it does is it gives us a section where we can apply style that only it works when the screen is a certain size. So here we see two different ways that a web page might be laid out. It might want to look like this in a web page and this in a phone. And to do that, we want to say, okay, when the screen is large, do the style this way. When it is small, do the style this way. Here's another example. Here it has three. It says, okay, when the web page is on a desktop, have it be in these 3 columns. When it is on a tablet, have it be in 2 columns. And when it's on a phone, have it be in a single column. Well, so we need to be able to establish in our style sheet different style rules for the different sizes. And to do that, we use this @media style rule. Okay, and we can put any kind of styles in here we want. So it starts with @media, and then we say what kind of media it is. So it could be screen or print. And here we have a screen. We're going to say it's for when it's a screen and when the minimum width is 600. So if it gets any smaller than that, don't apply this. All right? So another principle when you're doing responsive design is to code it for phones first. So as they're loading on phones, we want it a simple load, and then add these changing rules for when it gets bigger. So what we want to do is take our phone. Now it's okay, they call it design for mobile first, design mobile first, but I really think that when you're planning this out, you're going to design all 3 of the layouts. And so really when they say design mobile first, they're saying code the design for mobile first. So here we are, we're going to change our page so that when it is on a phone, it's going to be a single column. So to do that, we're going to code that first. So we're going to come over here and find our rule that said all the columns want to be 100%. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead, and this rule, I'm going to do it first up here. I'm going to move it before my grid view. Notice that this rule applies to all classes that have a value that it contains, COL hyphen. So it's going to apply to all of them. And we're going to make this 100%. Oh, sorry, width 100%. And I'm going to code this out. I'm going to comment this out so that it doesn't apply yet, because we're going to have to make some changes to it. So now what we've done is we have set the width of all our column, right? Column 1, column 2, column 3, all of them are going to be 100%. So when I save that, this is what I get. And so then the experience on the phone is that you get all the sections about the different distractions and how to resolve them, and then you get the aside that has all these different links to different discussions about distractions on the internet. So there we've designed it how we want it for mobile first. Okay, then when we get big enough, we want to be able to do, for a tablet, we want things to change. But let's go ahead and work with it. We already know how we want it for the desktop. So let's go ahead and add that next. We'll just do the desktop. So we're going to go in here, and this group of style is what we want to apply when it's desktop size. So what we're going to do is add an app media rule. Okay, so we're going to do app media. So when it's a screen and it has a minimum width, so it doesn't ever get smaller than this, right? So as long as it's at least this wide. And so we're going to set this to 992. And by the way, these values change over time. We're going to use a different value for the tablet too, because as devices change, these make a difference. So you're going to want to keep up on those and say, what width do we want to work with? So we're going to work with a pretty small desktop here. So when this happens, and now we want to put curly braces around all our rules. Notice that these are a whole bunch of style rules. We've got 12 different style rules here. We want to use curly braces to enclose all of them. So we're going to put our opening curly brace there and our closing curly brace there. And that's what we're saying. In this condition, when we're on a screen, when the web page is on a screen, and it's no smaller, its minimum width is 922. That means it's 922 pixels wide or more. Then apply these rules. So we save that. By the way, be sure and be doing this along with me, so you're making your changes as we go. And there we have it. Now we have it back to the layout that we had just originally, where it has those 3 columns. Okay, so now let's see what happens. We've gone back to the original layout, but what happens when we get smaller? All right, as soon as we get down to that 992 pixels, less, right, 991 pixels, then it starts doing, it no longer applies these rules. They no longer count because they're surrounded by this condition that only applies those rules. All right, we want to now do another set of rules for the tablet. So for the tablet now, we want to change it so that this section is 6 columns wide, this section is 6 columns wide, and then we'll actually have this one be 12 columns wide. So we're going to change that. And if we go into our code here and we say, okay, instead of, notice that it already has 2 different class values. One is column-floor and the other is main content. If we now come in and say, hey, we need column 6, it's like, oh, well, which style do I apply? Do I apply the column-4 or the column-6? And that's very confusing for it, right? Because it gets over here and it says, hey, wait a minute, you've got a column 4 and a column 6. So we can't do that. We need a whole new set of values for tablets. So what we're going to do, and this is how it's done, is you create a whole nother one of these, but you give them the class values a different name. And if we look over here, we can actually capture these from W3 Schools. And what it is, notice how everything is exactly the same, except that there is, the order is important here, so we want to do order here. Okay, So they've given them a different name, so that they are different classes, but the values are all exactly the same. We're still splitting it into exactly 12 columns. All right, now we want an at media rule, right? So we want the same kind of at media rule here. And in the example, they've used 600 pixels, but there are phones that have more pixels than that. So we're going to, things have changed since they've done that. So 768 pixels is what we're going to use right now for the phone, for the tablet. What that says now, if you apply these until you get smaller than 768. Okay, now notice we have two conflicting. It will use this until it gets down to 991, and it'll use this until it gets down to 767. Okay, so now we have a different set, and now we can come into our code and we can use those different column ones. We can say use M6, and now we don't have a conflict because those are two different class values and they won't be in conflict. They'll apply at different times. All right, we need to scroll down. Now this is going to be a bit of a scroll to find where that next column begins because we have so much content in here now. So here it is. So now we're going to want that one to be column, and we're using that medium 6. And then we'll scroll down to where we find the aside. And now the aside only has one, but we want to add a second class value, so we're going to do column -M-12. Now notice we're still in a single row, and what we've done is we've got two pieces of 12. Remember that we talked about in a row you want to add up to 12 columns, which we did for the full desktop. But now we have a different conflicting rule, and so this one adds up. It has 6, 6, and 12, so it actually has 24 columns. Because they're floating, they'll go ahead and wrap, and that will work out just fine. So let's go ahead and refresh. So now we're bigger than 992 or bigger, so we look fine. And now when we get down to 991, it goes to that 2-column width, right? We have those 2 columns take up 6 each, and this one takes up 12. So that gives us our tablet layout. If we keep getting smaller, once we get to 767, it drops down to that other style. And we have the single column version that will work great for the phone. So there you go. That's a responsive web page. So it's responding to the size of the screen. This is a great skill to have. All right, in this activity, we're still going to do a couple more things. We're going to do a little bit of styling of the header and of this first paragraph. And then in the next activity, we're going to do the navigation. So hang with us and we'll get this all done. But let's go ahead and work on styling this handling distractions. So up here, this is our header, and we're really going to apply this to all the pages. So learning activities just has a header there, managing procrastination, and since we're all connected, we're all going to look the same. Now these other ones don't have columns because we haven't added any column classes. So what we want to do is we're going to be working with our header section here. So in style, I'm going to add a section where I'm going to do that. And this one I can just use that element as my selector. Okay, and we're going to add a background. So we're going to play with the background, and I'm going to go ahead and use the shorthand version of background, so I can just style everything in here at once. I want to give it a color, and I'm going to do it with that light blue. So go ahead and bring the light blue value down here, and I want to do an image. So I've got an image called learn_r.png. Oops, PNG. And let's go see how we're doing so far. All right, So far it's not looking too good. Now we're going to go ahead and again we're going to apply this principle that we're going to style it mobile first. So we're going to set it up so it looks good on mobile first in this code, and then we'll go into our other areas and add style if we need to make changes to that. All right, so that doesn't look very high, so let's go ahead and give this a height value. And for the phone, I'm going to use 140 pixels. And now my background image is, I only want to use one of these. And so I'm going to set those up to be no repeat. And there I have it just sitting there on the left. Now it's too big. So I'm going to set my background size to match. So background size, I want it to be 140. Now this is a square. If I just set the first one, that's the width. And the second one is the height. This is a square image, so they're going to be exactly the same. If I just use one number, then the second one is set to auto, and that just simply keeps your proportions. So it's safe to do that as well. All right, so now I have an image there that's right where I want it. But now I want to move these words, I want to move them over and down. And so I'm going to be doing that with padding. So, because I want to keep that background color in there. So I'm going to use padding left to move it over, and I want to get it past that image, right, plus a little. So I'm going to make it 160 pixels, and that will move it over so that it isn't in the way of the image, so that way we have an image and then the words. And then I want to bring it down, so I'm going to use padding top. And I'm going to put the padding top at 24 pixels. It doesn't have to move down too far. And there I've got the heading kind of how I want it. Now notice this, see this white line around here? This is padding on the body. So we don't want to keep that. And so this is the body, and it's really not the header style. So I'm going to put it up here at the top because body applies to everything, right? And so to the whole page. But I'm going to go ahead and do margin 0. When you're using 0 values, you don't have to use a unit because it means exactly the same thing in all units. So I'm going to set the margin and padding of the body to 0. Now, this is going to work really good for our header here. Going to make it nice, fit there well, and in fact, it will work good for our aside as well. So but notice that it doesn't work so well for some other things, especially if we go to the other pages. So notice here our paragraphs are mushed right up against the edge, and our headings are. So there's a lot of things that are mushed right here because we just took it out of the body and we're used to having it. We have to watch what happens to all of our pages. So our paddings and our headings really need some. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some padding and margin back on some of the elements that we want to have it on. Notice that it doesn't work here, and the reason why we have padding here, remember we added a 15 pixel padding on our columns, so that works good right there. So we're just going to go ahead and add it to the other things. So I'm going to put a style rule right here, and I'm going to say, okay, for paragraphs and heading 1, heading 2, and I don't use all of these, but I'm going to go ahead and put it so that I have it if I add any more later. So for all of my heading tags, for paragraphs, for images, I want to go ahead and add a padding of, and I'm going to go ahead and just match. It's different than what the body was, but I'm going to go ahead and match what we have in our columns, and that will line things up really nicely. Okay, and now when we do that, then, okay, so now we have this padding, right, that's added here. So now we need to go back to whenever we're inside a row, go back to 0. So whenever we're inside a row, it's adding other padding. So we're going to get rid of this. So row paragraph, row heading 2, comma, dot row, heading, as I could do heading 1 first. So I'm just going to really add all of these with a row in front of them. So if they're in a row, then we don't want to add an additional padding. We'll go ahead and just let, because what it's doing is it's adding that, it's adding the padding for the row plus the padding, when it gets to the paragraph, it's adding another padding. And so we want to, for these ones, we want the padding to be, for the columns. And we can't change it for the columns or they won't have a separation between. So we want it to be 0. All right, so that took quite a bit of code to implement that, right? Because we wanted to take it away from the body, then we had to add it back to these, and then once we're inside a row, we wanted it not to be there. So lots of coding there to get that right. But so go ahead and make sure, pause that and get that all in your style sheet so things line up nicely. And that's what we went to get that heading to be able to fill up the edges. All right, now that we have that designed for what we want to do when it gets bigger, we don't really need to change it for the tablet. It looks like the right size for the tablet, but when we get big for a desktop, we want to make this a little higher and this image a little higher. And so we already have, we just have a bigger image, and because we have the space, we can use that bigger image. So we want to go ahead and change that for inside. So we're going to get inside, here we have to go back inside. We're not going to make any changes in the tablet section. So we're going to make it in the, we probably ought to put a comment here that identifies this as tablets. And then down here to put this as desktop. Okay, so down here, we're going to add another style rule inside here. And we can say, yeah, I'm going to tap this all in so we can see we're inside. And we're going to add some different style to the header in these conditions. Okay, so we're going to make the background size 200, because that's what size that image actually is. And then we're going to do the height of the background as actually 212. So I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger and give a little bit of space there. And then we have to change the padding too. So the padding's got to move over a little bit, padding left. We're going to do that at 240 pixels. And the padding top at 86 pixels. All right, and this should line us all up nice when we're at the desktop. All right, so that just made our header bigger when we're at the desktop. And then when we get down to tablet size, it goes smaller. And at phone size, it's smaller at the tablet and the phone. We didn't change that. So notice how you can change some things at 3 different settings. You can actually have as many different settings as you want. So you can go in and change whatever you want at different width. Okay, that puts us done. We've made our page responsive in several different ways. In our columns and in our header section, we've made a responsive web page. We'll do some more. We're going to come back and we'll keep adding style to this same code. So save it.